Welcome to Built to Win, the podcast created to help you level up your business game by developing a success mindset made for the long run. In this episode, How to Achieve Big Goals, you'll hear from Neora's leadership team, Jeff Olson, Amber Olson Rourke, Deborah Heisz, and Dave Fleming, about their approach to setting and reaching truly big goals. Find out why setting big goals is important and how to keep yourself and your team motivated and on track to achieving those big goals.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Built to Win. I think we have a very exciting episode for you guys today. It's something that I really enjoyed talking about, and it's something that certainly all of us on this podcast have a lot of experience with, which is accomplishing big goals. You know, we all might have big goals in our personal life, in our professional life, or maybe we lead a team and that team has big goals. But the key is, okay, I've got a big goal. How do I do it? How do I get it done? And I really, we have Jeff and Amber and Dave on the podcast today. And all three of them and myself have spent a lot of time working with big teams, doing big things, but we all have a different approach. So I think it's going to be really interesting to hear how we all approach accomplishing big goals, how we all get started, how we keep things on track, and how those big goals can actually lead to the life that you want, lead to your success. And so I really want to lead off today with asking, Mr. Jeff Olson, mentor to millions, how he approaches big goals, but really why big goals are important to success. So Jeff, welcome aboard to the podcast. Glad to have you back on. It's always good to hear from you. You have such great insights. Why do you think having big goals is important to success?
Well, first of all, success gives clues. And if you really study people who've had success in life, people you admire, you look up to, maybe even read their book, you all see they had big goals. They had goals, they had dreams, they had, vision. And so it starts there. And the sad things I heard this one time is most dreams, most ideas, most goals actually end up in a graveyard, never acted upon. And so, it's important. It's sort of a dichotomy there. The people who achieve things in life have them. The people who don't use them. Okay, they might think about them, but they don't use them. So, first of all, what I'd like to say is, to a certain degree, big goals. The word "big" implies, Elon Musk. Okay, well, I'm not speaking to that level, but it could be your child's soccer team who took last place last year, and you're telling them we're going to win the championship this year. You're setting a vision out there. You're setting a goal for that group of people that they can aspire to. So it's relative, but for today, we're talking about goals that can really change your life. And so one of the big things about goals is it attracts the people that you want. Now think about it. If you have very small goals, okay, I just want to make this little bit of extra money. That's good. That's a goal. That should be one of your goals. But that goal doesn't attract kind of people you really might want around you. Okay. So when you have larger goals, you attract larger people. We have inspiring goals, you attract inspiring people. So what you'll see in life, success is a lot about your associations and what you aspire to attracts people who are aspired to the same thing. So when you think about that, if you're putting it out there, and goals that aren't that significant, that are kind of small, which I think you need to have those are stepping stones along the way. But really, the kind of people you may want in your life, the people that can come in your life that can really make a difference, might not be inspired by them. So be thinking about that. Another thing I heard a long time ago: you can determine the size of a person by the size of the problem they can solve. Big goals bring bigger problems. Okay, it comes with the territory. And so, what you find through goal setting, especially as you stretch your goals, you start finding out more about who you are. And, again, you can determine the size of a person, the size of a person's success by the size of the problems that they can solve. And so I think it's kind of a litmus test. And so what I found in goal setting is and for me, I'm always trying to look at what is the thing that can really make the most difference. When you're starting a business, then you're trying to figure out, okay, usually when you're starting a business, you're not starting an industry, you're starting a business in an industry. So you're looking at the industry, you're trying to find out what is it going to be my competitive advantage, and I'll establish my goals so that I have a goal bigger than other people in that space for my competitive advantage. Okay, very rarely does somebody start an industry. Usually you're starting the side of an industry, but it really gives a person like the vision where they're going, but you've got to prioritize those. And that's one of the things I feel like I've done well in my life, I'm always trying to look for the low hanging fruit that can give me the biggest bang for the buck on a goal setting. Okay. But again, without goals, this is so critical. How can people rally around something? Think about a company. A company is just nothing but a bunch of people who come together around what? A common goal to build this, to do this in the industry. And that creates this synergy of those people. So that, I always say synergy, it's a group of people to go do something they want to done. If they're by themselves, they want to done it. They do it together. Okay. And so you think of yourself as a leader, it's one of the biggest things you do is you cast that vision, you cast that goal, you cast that dream. It attracts the people. But then from that standpoint, it's up to you as a leader to start prioritizing those goals. Okay. But how can you start prioritizing the mini goals that take you to the bigger goal unless you have a big goal? Okay. So it's all about stretching yourself, and it's all about saying, whatever you're looking at, whatever you're trying to do, maybe just get a little, bodacious, get a little bit out of your comfort zone and put it out there. Because what I have found, and I've heard this over and over from a lot of people, is as soon as you establish a goal, now we'll talk about this later on in this podcast, and you really make it become real in your mind. And as soon as that happens, it's amazing. It's almost like life starts rearranging itself. Things start to happen you never could have predicted that allow you to go to a place you never thought you could go to. But it would never happen if you hadn't put that goal out there. So it starts with that vision of a big goal.
I love that, because I think vision is everything. And that really is what a big goal is. One of the things about big goals that I find to be really true is that they're very complex, and they've got a lot of parts to them and a lot of things that you need to break down. It's not just, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to be there. A big goal really has a lot more complexity to it. And if you don't have that clear vision of where you're going, it's really easy to get off track. It's really easy to not be going in the direction of your goal. In fact, one of the things that I share with a lot of people, in my role is, yeah, it's a really big goal, but let's get started. And that's the vision we're going for. And let's take those first few steps, because we aren't going to get there standing here. A lot of people want to have perfect plans. And when it comes to big goals and big goal setting, for me, is you can have a great goal, but you're probably not going to have a perfect plan when you start. You're better off having a 70% plan and get moving in the right direction and kind of discover the path along the way.
Yeah, a lady named Rachel Ray, who's big in the podcast space. And
Rachel Hollis.
Rachel, sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. I'm glad we have all of us on this podcast together to help each other through this. Okay, but that's why you have to have a team, attract better people to do around. Exactly. But with that said, she did a podcast and she'd watched the talk I'd done, and I said, the reason you have a goal is not because it's what's going to get you there; it gets you started. And she came on and said she said it very, very flamboyantly, but that was a great thing to say, because it is the truth. It gets you started. It's not what's going to get you there, but you have to get started. Without a goal, you have nothing pulling you out of the starting line and get going.
I'm really big into happiness, and our podcast, Live Happy Now, talks about this a lot. But one of my favorite definitions for happiness is the joy one feels when striving towards their potential. Well, when you're striving towards your potential, you have to have a goal. You have to know where you're going. No one's striving to stand still. No one's striving to do the same thing they were comfortable doing yesterday. So I also think, going for big goals is something that brings a lot of happiness to your life. And as we know, happiness is a precursor to success. So for me, that's a really big thing. Set a big goal. Give yourself something to reach for. You're going to find it not only brings the skill that Jeff was talking about earlier, of being able to tackle big problems, but I think you'll also find it brings a lot of joy to your life, that sense of accomplishment you feel. It really is huge. So it always comes down to getting started, though. I think a lot of people really, really struggle with, okay, I've got this idea of where I want to go, and they don't get off the starting line because they don't know how to start. Dave, when you look at a big goal, what's your approach? How do you really get moving?
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? Because it's so easy to look at something really big and get intimidated by just the sheer size or even the audacity to think that it's possible. And so for me, something that's always helped me, and this has been around for a long time. This is not my idea. But I always come back to the 7 habits principle where Covey talks about you begin with the end in mind. And what are you trying to accomplish? If you can envision what you're trying to accomplish, then you can break it down into smaller, more achievable pieces. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is I try to get it into what can I do each day. So it's kind of, yes, we're going to slide edge our way into this big goal, but what can you do on a daily basis that is going to move you towards that goal? Because if you can look at what to do every day, you're going to be able to get what you need done every day. If you look at that big, hairy, audacious goal that's sitting out there, it's going to be much more difficult to really get that done. And that's I think that's just human nature at its best, is people are excited by the long-term vision of things. I mean, who doesn't get excited about what's possible? But at the same time, it's really intimidating. It's really hard to get that done if you're looking at that long term and trying to see, how do I get there? So for me, it's really breaking it down into those little itty bitty pieces, smaller pieces. That's what helps people get started. And then just keep at it. You just keep at it until you get it done. That's what I've done.
It's a little bit of the slight edge too, right? Mastering the mundane, doing what you have to do in little bitty pieces every day. You know what you have to do.
Absolutely.
As Jeff was talking about earlier, one of the keys, I think, to accomplishing big goals for a lot of us is that we don't do it alone. You attract a group of people, or you lead a group of people, or you're a team member of a group that's trying to accomplish something really big. And, Amber, you and I have spent a lot of time working together, and you've done some pretty big things. I'm curious, how do you approach big goals when it comes to leading your team?
So I think as Dave kind of touched on, having that clear vision of the impact you're trying to accomplish is really, really key. And being able to, more than anything, communicate the clear vision of the impact. And what I mean by impact is I see a lot of people get really stuck in the how-tos. And that's usually like the least important part of getting started, is because ultimately how you're going to arrive at that impact, it's might be different, and it's likely will end up looking different than how you initially start, right? So if you think about anything that you're trying to do, there's going to be multiple paths to get to the impact that you want. And so you don't want to create a plan that's so rigid and narrow focused that if that particular plan gets thrown off course, you're totally lost on how you're still going to make that impact. So if you think about just an example, say an impact that you want to make, you want to help veterans learn skill sets to get a job, right? That's just a random example I made up, but that is the impact that you're trying to make. And your idea is you're going to do that through a podcast. You're going to launch a podcast, and it's all going to be about teaching veterans these skill sets. And maybe a podcast is the way, and maybe not. But are there other ways that you could accomplish that same impact besides a podcast? Of course. So that if the podcast goes off track or doesn't work, you're still looking, you're largely focused still on the impact and not really the roadmap. Because if you get too stuck on the play-by-play roadmap, you might actually miss the actual destination, and you're putting yourself in a position where it's really hard for you to pivot when a challenge comes your way. And I will tell you, I've never accomplished something big that didn't come with like 15 different huge challenges. And so the road that we ended up taking to get there looked differently than we thought it would to get started. But we were very clear on the impact that we were trying to make, which allowed us to course correct. So, as long as your plan is good enough to get started and you have a clear vision of the impact, get started. Just get started. That is the goal, is getting yourself started. And one of the top enemies of greatness is delay. And I see it all the time. I'm going to delay it till I have more information, till the timing's better, till the conditions are easier, till I feel more motivated, till I have, this particular teammate to work with. All these reasons to delay. The cost of delay is great. And so what people are successful do is they allow themselves to still move when there's unknowns present. You still move in the unknowns because your plan is good enough to get started, and you know the general impact you're trying to accomplish. And along the way, you're going to figure out how to get there.
I love the idea of painting the goal as an impact you're trying to make, not a thing. Because I think
Right.
a lot of us get stuck in the idea of the process is somehow the goal, that we did all the right things. Then we got there, we didn't have the results we wanted. And it's because we were after building a thing and not actually what we were trying to do or change. I think it's really insightful. I love that. The other thing that is really true is along your path to accomplish a big goal, we all see this. It never goes how you expect. Ever. You got it all planned, it's all going to do this, and you get in the room and somebody from IT, and I'm not really picking on IT, says that's really
It's
good.
always IT.
It's always IT. No, it's not always IT. Says it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And you have to make decisions and you have to make changes. And my fear is, that people are going to stop, right? You were talking about how greatness, greatness isn't knowing everything. I put a little bit different, which is that perfect is the enemy of great. We've all heard good is the enemy of great. Perfect is also the enemy of great. If you're waiting for perfect conditions, perfect team, perfect time, it doesn't exist. But I see more projects stopped or stalled, or people standing still when they have these great dreams and they just can't get started because the conditions aren't perfect. So what do you do? What do you do when things go off the rails? How do you get back on track? How do you get people moving again? It really is, to accomplish big things, it takes commitment, and you have to continue to do the right things every day. So what happens when the team stops?
To a certain degree, when you want to achieve big goals, you want to say the buck stops with me. Okay, what I mean by that is, if anybody's around me, you've heard me say, people want to know that you know who you are, you know where you're going, you know how you get there, and you got to ask yourself, are people inspired by your dreams? Are they inspired by your vision? Okay, and so how well are you speaking to your vision, your goal? Your thing you want to aspire to. How well when you speak to it, do people believe it? Does it inspire people and believe them? And when that happens, if you can do that to people, they'll buy into your goal. They'll become part of your team. They'll become part of your belief and vision. And it's not, you can't just have, a big goal with a big vision, but no belief. You got to have belief. Okay. There can't be an incongruency there. And belief will lead to finally the thing they have to have. That turns on desire. Desire is just, what gets you up early, keeps you up late, and gets you going when things aren't working. And you've heard me always say successful people just do it. Unsuccessful people are not willing to do. And so, if a goal's not working, that doesn't mean that the goal is wrong. Okay. It might not even mean the plan's that far off. It just means there's something wrong. Okay. But if you still have this dream, this goal, and you have a belief in it, and you still have the desire, you'll fix it. You will figure it out. That will change the activities. We have a tendency, like Amber said, we focus on the hows way too much. Okay. The activity will come. Okay. But if you don't have a big vision and a group of people around you who've bought into that vision, a group of people who believe in that vision and are inspired, have desire around that vision, then the activities just will not sort themselves out. Okay, so I wouldn't be so anal about the activity. I'd be more about the group around me, because you think about, I watched the thing about building this satellite for space just the other day on a documentary. I think they had 462 what they call single point failures. If any one of those things fails, the whole mission goes down. Okay, and when they're putting this big telescope up in the space, and so they had all kinds of activities that broke apart, all kinds. But they had a group of people who were so inspired to put this telescope into space and do something that never been done. 469, I think, single point failures means any one of those things fails, the whole mission doesn't happen, and the thing's up in the air and they can't fix it. Okay. And so these people there's no way you could plan out all those activities. Couldn't have done it, but they had a vision. They believed in the vision, and it created a huge desire that got them through the activities and got them to find the results, which is out there now showing us how the universe started. Okay. We're seeing things 13.8 billion light years away right now because of this telescope that was unimaginable years before. Just an example. Okay, so it's the vision. I'll give you a smaller one. Just today, Amber's husband Damon he put out a dream about a month and a half ago that he was going to create this activity in an organization he was working with. And he's going to, and I'm just going to use the number, he's going to create about 1,000 things of activity. That's a big number, okay? And so he pulled together a group of people. It was a small group. And he gave them his vision that we're going to do this to create these 1,000 points of activity. And they bought into it. They started doing it. And you know what's happening? It's about ready to be done, okay? Now, he didn't, I guarantee you, the way he thought it was going to get there is not the way it got there, but they got there, okay? The reason they got there, they had a vision. They believed in the vision. It inspired them with desire. And then they figured out the activities and they got the result. So that is the most important thing, is that your ability to put out a cast a big vision that inspires people and they believe in it, so that they're willing to go through the plan that doesn't work, to the next plan that doesn't work, to the plan that kind of works, to a plan that maybe works, to a plan that eventually does work, okay? And that's how things are achieved. But you've got to have that vision, belief, and desire in front of it.
I love that. And I absolutely agree. It's very hard to get people to do anything productive. And get people isn't really the right way to put it, because I don't think you're really asking people to do something as much as you're saying, hey, let's go there together, and getting a vision that they believe in and get behind. When you have to push somebody, it's no fun. When they're pulling you, it's a lot of fun. That's kind of my experience. If people understand how they are contributing to that vision, and they believe that vision is worthwhile, something they should be striving for, something they should be attaining, and something they want to do, they'll pull you. I always put it as, the last thing I want to do is manage people. I'd rather set a vision and let's get there together, and managing people becomes not necessary, because everybody's rowing in the right direction and they understand their piece of getting to that vision, which I'm sure with the telescope or the guys who put the first man on the moon, it had to be that way. Everybody had to understand their little piece, but it was for a much greater vision. Of course, projects go off track all the time. Plans go off track all the time. Vision gets cloudy. You have scope creep. You think you're on the same vision, have the same vision for something, find out you don't. Things get a little bit off the rails. Dave, I'm sure you've experienced this. How do you get things back on the rails when you're working with a team, leading a team, and things have really gone in a direction you didn't expect?
That's an excellent question. And the first thing I would tell people is that if your project did not go off the rails, you're either lying to yourself or your team is lying to you about the results that they had, because that's the nature of projects, right? There's the joy, there's the mystery of the things that you don't know. And really you experience those when you come across those in the course of completing something big and bold. And if you're not completing big and bold things, you're not going to have a change. You're not going to have to pivot. You're not going to have to like redefine what you're trying to accomplish. And so I think the first thing is really kind of coming to grips with the understanding that going into anything worth achieving, there are going to be bumps and there's going to be turbulence. There's going to be stuff that is hard, and you just have to mentally prepare that that's okay. Like you're like, it's going to happen, and it's cool that it's happening, because when it's happening, that means things are happening. That means progress is being made. So it's really, it's really about the mindset going into your project, that when things change, how do we handle that? Like, how do we adapt to what's going on? Because you have to, in my mind, you have to have a plan for when the plan breaks down. Like if you don't have a plan for when the plan breaks down, you're stuck. And that's where projects and plans and everything kind of really gets off the rails, is when you don't know what to do when things go sideways. So it's the old Boy Scout mantra, right? It's like, be prepared for when things don't go right, because they won't. There's going to be something. There's always going to be something. Sometimes it's small. Sometimes it's catastrophic. Sometimes we talk about, on this podcast, we talked about pivoting because you've discovered that what you wanted to accomplish is not going to be accomplished the way that you thought it was. What do you do when that happens? And if you're prepared for that, if you understand that it's okay for that to happen, then you can move forward. But if you're not prepared for things to change, you're not mentally prepared, you don't have that mindset that things are going to change or going to have to pivot from what you maybe originally thought, there's really no coming back from that. So it's, for me, it just comes down to that. It just comes down to being prepared to change and being flexible, willing to course correct along the journey. If you can't do that, you'll never get anything big accomplished.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, if you get too rigid, basically you lose the belief of the people that are trying to help you accomplish the goal, because rigidity prohibits them from having any impact, any influence, what they've learned, what they know. None of us have perfect knowledge. And if we go into a project, even if or a vision, even if we feel like we're the only one that can contribute to that vision, we really are stymied. And we will go off the rails. And if we're not flexible enough to adjust and to take input and to discover new things, we can't really get anything done. For me, mindset, though, is everything. Amber touched on this earlier. It's really important, talking about the impact something makes. For me, big goals also have to have a huge why behind them. It's not enough to have the goal. I think you have to be able to have the why and communicate the why and have people internalize that. It's almost a feeling. It's an emotional attachment to the goal. Otherwise, when things get really hard, nobody wants to pick it back up again because they don't have that strong, this is why we're doing it. I'm just doing it because, I agreed to do it. And when you lose track of that why, or if you don't have that why at the beginning, when it gets hard, people bail. And I think it's really important to keep attached to the why you're doing something. Amber, I know you've had challenges accomplishing big goals along the way. You've had challenges leading people, keeping people engaged, keeping people true to the vision that they set. They set a vision, and then they 3 months later, they're like, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
How do you move through that? How do you help other people move through that?
Starting with like what I see people do, because I think this is really common as people start to move through going towards a big goal, as they've gotten themselves off the starting block, right? And then very quickly they start trying to major in minor things, meaning they're going down rabbit holes of things that ultimately aren't that important in achieving their goal, right? So if we keep with our same example, the person trying to start a podcast about helping veterans learn skill sets. Like they could spend hours researching what is the best microphone setup and what's the best aesthetic and whatever. At some point, you got to make a decision and move on, right? You could, be researching for hours and days, which platform should you use, which this and that. There's all of these things that people tend to, whether it's business, life, doesn't matter, that they really start thinking they need to be an expert in this part of their plan in order to achieve the plan. And that's really not the case. And all this really is another delay tactic in disguise, right? There's this fear of really pushing forward, so people will stop at any point that they can to now try to become an expert or problem solve problems that don't even need to be solved. So what I always really push the team and the people that I'm working with is, can you ultimately achieve the impact you're trying to achieve without becoming an expert in this, right? I teach a lot of people to become micro entrepreneurs, and the social media example is a great thing. They might get stuck in like, well, I'm not a social media influencer. I don't know how to do all these, crazy features on Reels. And it's like, okay. And do you still think you can make the impact you want to make, even if you don't become a social media expert? And the answer is yes, right? There's other paths. And so people tend to find the reasons that they might not achieve the goal and get stuck there trying to become an expert at major in that minor detail, instead of just keep moving, make decisions quickly. If you make decisions quickly, you're moving quickly, which means if you made the wrong decision, you're able to recover quickly. And if you're moving quickly, making decisions quickly, you're still going to get to the end much faster than the person that stops and tries to problem solve every little thing, tries to become an expert and every little thing. And in terms of like what you do when a big challenge comes along, those are kind of like what I would consider minor challenges that people kind of just put in front of themselves. But when there's major challenges, I've done some pretty big projects and things, rebranded our entire company. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. Big product launches where a lot of things, kind of went sideways that we had to recover from. And it's really what you do in those circumstances that define who you are as a leader, right? Anybody can lead when everything's going to plan. I love the Mike Tyson quote of everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. It's like, right, true. What happens when you get punched in the face? Like, are you still able to hold belief that you're going to find that impact, even if now, the roadmap looks different? Are you able to pivot and find a different way to get there? Or are you so stuck in this initial roadmap that you had that you get kind of paralyzed? And the big one that was mentioned earlier is, can you keep the vision of the team around you going forward? And that's one that I really focus a lot on. And something that, my team gives me feedback on is like, no matter what problem they bring to me, it's not going to get a reaction from me. I'm going to stay really like cool, calm, and like, all right, let's talk it out. Let's solve this. Like, your reaction is going to set the tone, and your ability to have the posture for your team and for the people that are coming alongside you that we're still moving forward. It does a lot to keep people moving forward, because people in general find reasons to get stuck. And that's largely based out of fear. And so as a leader, your job is to get people to do things that they wouldn't do without you there. And that's a big part of it. Keep pulling that vision forward no matter what happens.
No, I love that. I love, the example of people trying to become experts in things. I read an article once. Well, actually, I think it was when I was editing Success Magazine. And it was about a person who was asking what kind of accounting software they needed to run their new micro small business. And the business coach's response was, how many sales have you made?
Yes.
You don't need accounting software if you haven't made any sales. Go out and make some sales, and then worry about what kind of accounting software you want.
Exactly.
And it's so true. People like to get obsessed with things they can control, is what I think a lot of it has to do. If I can obsess about what microphone to use for a podcast or some small thing that I can ultimately control, it's easier there than it is in the scary world of I've got to do things I haven't done before, which is really what it's all about. Big goals are usually about doing things you haven't done before. Jeff, you've accomplished some really huge things in life. I mean, you've started companies, you've sold companies that you've started, and you've built one of the largest Salesforce organizations in the industry that we operate within. What advice do you have for people that want to really start and do something and make something big, create something big for themselves?
I wish there was a magical answer to that. And I think there's been a lot of good insights about that on this podcast already. But at the end of the day, one of the nicknames I've always had was Damn the Torpedoes Olson, which it means is I just kept going. Okay. And so for me, it was constantly almost being like a bulldog, just going forward. I studied Napoleon Hill and his whole goal setting thing. He talked about it's got to be written, it's got to be specific, it's got to have a time element, it has to have a plan. It won't be what gets you there, and you have to be willing to pay the price. But I always found the sixth thing he talked about, and he said this is the most important thing, is that you have to look at it all the time. You've got to constantly reinforcing yourself, because you're the host of that goal. You're the leader of that goal. You're the one that's going to inspire people around you. And as we've heard about, there's going to be distractions. Okay. And as you heard Amber said, she doesn't react when they come to her with a problem. And you heard what Dave said, they expect the problems. Okay. It's just part of the journey. And so for me is, and this is a thing I learned along the way as I started learning more and more about life, that is more about mindset than it was about the activity itself. The activity will take care of itself if the mindset was in place. And as I focused on that more, and I started looking at successful people and studying what people wrote about goals, I would always hear them talking about the power of your subconscious mind, that it's just God gave you this incredible computer. It really doesn't think. It only does what it's told. Okay. And so if you're not telling it what to do, if you're not telling it what you want, it just kind of lets in everything. It just lets everything in. So I mean, it's this clutter. You're spacing the world. But when you're specifically know what you want, you're looking at it every day. You're repeating it to yourself every day. It becomes part of how you breathe. It's part of your essence, I should say. Everybody around you knows that for your goal. And what happens is your subconscious mind goes to work for you. It starts blocking all those things that aren't going to serve that goal, and it starts just looking for things that you would never seen before because it's now clear, and it starts letting into things that's going to serve the goal. So for me, it's constant, just staying on it no matter what. Okay, knowing that it will take care of itself, not being afraid of the challenges, not being afraid of those things. But if I could do that, if I was constantly in alignment and looking at my goals, and think about this: why is prayer important? Because you're praying to something, a goal, a dream. Why are dreams work? Because you're telling your subconscious mind you want that. Okay. Why do affirmations work? Because you're telling your subconscious mind this is what you want. Those are goals. Those are dreams. Those are aspirations. Those are visions. Okay. It all starts there. And so those things work because you are now programming, like I say always, the greatest gift you got, your subconscious mind. But if you have got to be the person who's the gatekeeper for that. Your conscious mind is going to determine what you let in and what you don't let in. And once you tell that, then you'll start getting those goals. And so I think it really, of course, you got to have the vision. Of course, you have the goals. Of course, you have to have a plan. Of course, you got to get the team around you. Of course, you got to have the belief. Of course, you have to have the desire. But you are responsible for that lead dog, that when it's leading everybody towards that. If you waver just a little bit, it crumbles below you. Okay. And so I think that's the biggest thing you have to have. You have to have a very, very clear vision that you're committed to, and you've got to be sold out on it. And you got to be, Napoleon Hill said when he studied the 500 most successful people and went through all the 13 things they have in common, he talked about the third most important thing was autosuggestion. They were reminding themselves every day what they wanted to achieve. These are very smart people. Top 500 people. It took 20 years to interview them. Okay. And they said auto-suggestion. They were constantly reminding themselves of what they wanted to achieve, not because they forgot, because they knew the power of their mind, and they knew the power of suggestion, and they knew the power of, programming that so that it would do the work, does work for you. It's amazing how many people, go through their life and they never put that to work for themselves. Never do, and it's sitting there, it's sitting there waiting for you. I read a book called The Subconscious Mind Speaks. And it just says, your subconscious mind is a slave. It's just sitting there waiting for you to tell it what to do. It doesn't think for itself. Okay. And it's 90% of your brain. So use it. And so I think that's one of the most important things you have to do.
That's awesome. I think if you haven't read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, it's a challenging read because of the time it was written in, but it is more than worthwhile in terms of getting your mindset right and understanding how you become successful and what successful people look like. Because I do think that's a challenge for a lot of people, is what does success look like? And I think a lot of people have it wrong. So I think it's a really, really tremendous answer, Jeff. And I'm going to do Dave and Amber a disservice because I'm going to ask them the same question, which is, Dave, what do you think is your best advice for someone who's setting out to achieve big goals?
Well, I think the best advice that I probably could give, and I totally 100% support everything that Jeff just said. I don't know that I could add much more to that, but I think take it a step back from that before you set that goal and before you start thinking about what's possible. One of the pieces of advice I would give people, especially people who are looking to do big things, is to surround yourself with people who have done big things, or who think big, or who strive for more. I remember early in my career getting to know people who had done things and achieved things that never had even really crossed my radar. And it just opened my mind to some of the possibilities that were out there. And so I think even before you get started, really identifying what you can do, who you can be around, and like kind of it just opens your mind to different things that you just don't get any other way than by maybe somebody helping you get that into your brain for you. maybe you've got it. Maybe you're already there and you're already the big thinker and you've got everything figured out, and that's fantastic. But I know for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's not necessarily that way. It's you got to have somebody out there who can maybe broaden those horizons. And then once you've got that in your system, like hang on to it, right? Sometimes it's easy to let go and say, okay, I did something pretty cool. And now I've got to now I'm going to rest on my laurels. Like Jeff could have easily walked away multiple times and said, I'm good. I did enough.
Mhm.
But it's that next level. It's like, okay, now that I've done that, what else can I do? Like what's the next thing? And I think if you can maintain that level of excitement about things, I mean, that's the next step, right? Is like being able to think and envision those big things, get them done, and then move on to the next one, and just don't stop.
One thing you said, because we always talk about laws of association, and we use the number 5. You are the combined average of the 5 people associate the most. And we'll say if you're around 5 people with good attitude, you can't have good attitude if you don't have your people associated with have good attitude. Same thing, goal setting. If you want to have big goals and your laws of association, none of them have goals or big goals. It's just what you're saying. You let other people around you be part, you're part of that for them and then part of that for you. But you think about the people who are your laws of association, that have the influence on your life, and what kind of goals and dreams do they have? Okay. Because that is the environment. It's going to make it conducive for you to have bigger and better goals.
I think that's really important because so many people don't set big goals for themselves. So many people are happy just accomplishing what's comfortable. I encountered someone early in my career who was my age. We were both 30, and I was super excited about something going on at work because the possibilities it was going to open up. And his response was, "I don't want any more. I'm happy where I am. And why, I don't want more work." And at 30, that floored me that somebody else who was the same level I was in a company was satisfied with where they were at 30. I couldn't conceive of it. So surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, will support your vision, will support where you want to go. I think that is really critical, both to help you set the right goal or the big enough goal or the interim goal, as well as to help you get there and lift you up when you fail a little bit, right? Because we all fail. So having that support group of people who are going to lift you up when you fail rather than say, "See, I told you so," is really, really important. Amber, what advice do you have for someone who is facing a challenge of meeting a big goal they have just set?
I think working harder on you than you work on anything else. And I think people hear this, but they don't really hear it because you will never achieve goals that outpace your own self-development. Like you will not achieve things that are outpacing the work that you're doing on yourself. And this even holds true on things that you wouldn't really think it has a lot to do with. Like I was watching the documentary Full Swing on Netflix for golf fans. I think I remember the name right. I think this golfer's named Wyndham Clark, and they follow him, and he is supposed to be this amazing golfer coming out of college. Everyone has these big expectations for him, and he is not performing, not making cuts. And he's super frustrated because he's so focused on getting the results. And then he gets to the point of frustration where he decides, I have to do something different. So he makes this one change. And the one change is he hires a mindset coach. And this mindset coach is basically just working on him with the things that we just talked about, having him write down affirmations, having him envision himself winning, having him read, certain books and things that get him in the right mindset. And with that one change, now after he started this, he is winning all these majors. He made it to the Ryder Cup, on and on. Right. And so golf is a sport that's mainly a physical activity, yet you still won't outpace your mindset. And so if that holds true in there, it definitely holds true in something where you're the brand, the leader, the person who has this entrepreneurial vision that you're trying to make come reality, is that you have to be so intentional on how you're working on yourself. And it's so available in today's time. Like, we are so blessed to live in the technology era that we live in now versus like 200 years ago, where if you wanted to seek knowledge, you had to, go to a library and pull, try to sort through books and find the right thing to read. Like, now you can listen to podcasts for free. You can go on YouTube and listen. Like, information is out there, but are you going to be disciplined enough to make working on you and working on your mindset, working on your resiliency, working on those things as important as the rest of your job? And if not, I think you will continuously be frustrated. And if so, you will set yourself apart. It's the kind of the most epic slight edge decision you will make, which is those things you do daily, will you or won't you? And I think it kind of it sorts itself out through those daily decisions.
This has been a phenomenal podcast today. I've enjoyed talking to each of you and hearing your different perspectives. And, for me, if you didn't take a lot of notes on this one, go back and listen to it again. There's a lot of nuggets there. I know most of you listening to this podcast have goals in life. Most of you have a vision of where you want to go. I hope that this episode allowed you to get some tips on how to do that. There was a lot of good stuff out there, and I hope you tune in with us next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
That was Neora's Jeff Olson, Amber Olson Rourke, Deborah Heisz, and Dave Fleming talking about some of the tools they use to achieve big goals and how you can do that too. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if this is your first episode of Built to Win, we invite you to go back and listen to our story from the beginning. You can find us wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And while you're getting to know us, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And we'd love for you to leave a rating and let us know what you think of the show.